Parshas Vaera. This week's Parsha begins in Shmos, Perek Vav, Pasuk Beis. That's Exodus 6:2. The very first verse presents us with a few challenges. Reads as follows: Vaydaber Elohim el Moshe, Vayomer Elav Ani Adonai. Elokim spoke to Moshe, and he says, I am Hashem. That's when we're talking about the name of God outside of reading a verse, so we use the word Hashem. And that's when we say Baruch Hashem, and we use Hashem which means the name, rather than using the actual name. But we're distinguishing now between two names that appear in the first verse. One of them is Elokim, and the other is Hashem. This phrasing is unusual for two reasons. First, in contradistinction to the phrase Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, this doesn't say Vaydaber Hashem, it says Vaydaber Elokim el Moshe, and Elokim spoke to Moshe. How many times does this phrase appear in all of the Torah? Once. In contrast to Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, it appears over 100 times. I looked at my concordance over here, and I counted. It's about 110, 115 times. Sometimes it's Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe v'el Aharon, but it's always Vaydaber Hashem. Here it's Vaydaber Elokim. It's unusual. Why Elokim rather than Hashem? Secondly, Vayomer Elav Ani Hashem. And he said to him, I am Hashem. Why now? Why is he introducing himself now after we've had the burning bush? After Hashem has engaged in conversation, even one might say persuasion or argumentation, with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu has delivered Hashem's message, and all of a sudden, now, Hashem says, Ani Hashem. Why? So let's look in context. Following verse says as follows: Vaera el Avraham, el Yitzchak, ve'el Yaakov, bekel shakai. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the name of Kel Shakai. Two other names of Hashem. And now focusing on the name, Ushmi Hashem lo nodati lahem. And I was not known, I did not make myself known to them in the name of Hashem. What is going on? So we have an unusual phrasing. We also have an emphasis on the name of God. And it sounds like Hashem is introducing himself for the first time, where that's not at all what's happening. So how do we explain this? So we continue. V'gam hakimosi es brisi itam loseis lahem es eretz kanan es eretz migreim asher goru ba. I have, on the one hand, established a bris means a covenant with them, to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they sojourned. V'gam ani shamati esnakas b'nei Yisrael shel Mitzrayim mavidim osam. I've also heard the outcries of the children of Israel who are being oppressed or worked very hard by the Egyptians. Va'ezkor es berisi. And I remembered my covenant. So this covenant is the covenant of deliverance to the land of Canaan, which eventually becomes known as the land of Israel. But why this name, Hashem, Elokim, Vaydaber Elokim? What's the significance of these two names? So we go into the previous Parsha, the end of Parshas Shemos. Excuse me. So Hashem had commissioned Moshe to go to Paro and to tell Paro, let my people go. And Paro says, no such thing, no way. He makes it worse for the Jews, for the Bnei Yisrael, for the children of Israel. Now, not only do they have to perform the service, not only do they have to make bricks, but they even have to find the raw materials themselves. And according to the sages, they still had to maintain the same quota of production. So their lives got considerably worse after Moshe appeared to Paro. And Paro asks, and Moshe asks a question. Vayoshev Moshe el Hashem vayomar. And Moshe returns to Hashem, and he says, Hashem, lama hariosa lama zeh, lama zeh shlachtani. Why have you made it bad or worse for this people? Why'd you send me? It seems like it was a failed mission. Why are you sending me on a failed mission? Umei oz basi el paro l'daber b'shmecha. And from the moment that I came to Paro to speak in your name, Heira la'amazeh, he made it worse for this people. Adsil lo itzalta samecha. And you did not save your people. So now, Hashem responds to Moshe. He says, Vayom Hashem el Moshe, atot tireh asher e'eseh leFaro. You'll see what I do to Paro. Because he will send them out with a strong hand. Question about whether it's Paro's strong hand or Hashem's strong hand. And with a strong hand he will cast them out of his land. And then we have that's the end of last week's Parsha, that's the end of Shmos. We end with a question and an answer of sorts by Hashem. The question of Moshe Rabbeinu is, why did you make things worse? Lama harayosa lama zeh. And you didn't save the people. You sent me on a mission. The mission failed. How can that be? Why'd you do this? And then Hashem teaches, according to the commentaries, Hashem teaches Moshe a lesson. There is din. There is justice, and there is rachamim, and there is mercy. The name of Hashem, spelled with the four letters Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, it's a name that we do not pronounce as it's written. We just refer to it either as Hashem or as Adonai. So that refers to Hashem either as the merciful, or if it's written in four different letters, Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud, it refers to God's position of the master of everything, the Adon of everything. Now, the name Elokim, on the other hand, refers to God as judge. And the concept is Midas Hadin. This is the attribute of justice. In fact, at the beginning of the very beginning of the Chumash, it says Bereshis bara Elokim. In the beginning, God Elokim created, and it's throughout the entire first chapter that way. And it's in the second accounting of the creation where it says Ela toldo shamayim va'aretz bi'baram biyom asos Hashem Elokim eretz v'shamayim. When Hashem Elokim created the heaven and the earth and the heavens. So we see that the very beginning of the Chumash begins with Elokim, repeatedly Elokim. And Rashi and other commentaries based on Medrash say that Hashem intended, or at least considered, creating the world with the attribute of strict justice, but saw that the world would not be able to be sustained on that basis, so he introduced mercy as well. So we have here a distinction between Elokim and Hashem. What Hashem is doing is teaching Moshe a lesson. He says, just because you do not see the consequences of the actions immediately, it doesn't mean that justice isn't happening. Moshe's query is, this is not just. Lama, why? This is a question that we frequently ask or think when things that are not just, that appear not to be just, happen. The Gemara refers to this as tzaddik v'ralo, or an example of this is a righteous person who suffers during during his stay in this world, or rasha v'tovlo, a person who is evil and seems to be enjoying himself in this world. So that is a question of what happens to justice there. And Elokim is responding. Vayidaber Elokim, Rashi says, is a language of, it's kosher. It's a language of, in some sense, harsh or unforgiving or rigid, which is that Hashem is telling Moshe, just because you do not understand where the justice lies in this episode, it doesn't mean it's not happening. It is happening. And Hashem says that I appeared to the forefathers, to my promise. He actually appeared to the forefathers with the name of Hashem also, but it was only in name. And Rashi says that the name of Hashem, when it comes to a bris, to a covenant, means that Hashem fulfills his promise. Shakai, name of Hashem, means it hasn't happened yet. There is a promise that it will happen, but there isn't a fulfillment. Fulfillment of the promise comes later. And that's a problem in the human condition. When things happen, and in real time, we do not understand. And Moshe, as a human being who is not divine, is in the same basket as the rest of us. He doesn't understand. And he says, why? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is addressing Moshe, but he's not just addressing Moshe Rabbeinu. He's not just addressing Moses, he is addressing us as well. Because we all have this question. And that's why the Gemara says that in this world, when something bad happens, we say, Baruch Dayan Ha'emes. Blessed is the true judge. But we do not understand. And that's why we say Hashem is the true judge. We would not have done it this way. That's implicit in the bracha. Lost lavo, in the future when we have more clarity presumably after the coming of Mashiach, or in Olam Haba, the world to come, we will say the bracha of Hatov HaMeitiv, that it's all good. We do not understand. And Hashem is saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, just because you do not understand the rationale or the justice, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It is happening. And say the Meforshe Rashi, that what Hashem is saying is the forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, my word was good enough. If I said, you're getting it, they believed it with the same intensity and the same certitude as if they saw it themselves. Moshe Rabbeinu needed to see it. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, just hold on. Reserve judgment. Do not question me. I will deliver. I will deliver. I will redeem my people from this travail, and I will bring them to the promised land. And I just have to say parenthetically, we are very fortunate to live in this period of time where, despite all of the problems that are going on, we actually are we are witness to the beginning of the redemption as we see the return of our brethren to our homeland, to the land of Israel, which was desolate for 2,000 years. And the prophets, the Navi Yeshaya, others, talk about the return of the Jews to the land, something which would have been very difficult to even imagine a few hundred years ago, let alone a few thousand years ago. And yet, here we are living in a time where you pay $1,000, $2,000, you can get on a plane and you can go to Israel and you can speak in Lashon HaKodesh, and this is God delivering on his promise. The lesson is, just because it's not happening when you want it to happen, it doesn't mean that it will. We must have bitachon, we must have faith and confidence that the Almighty will deliver. Have a good Shabbos.